I'm Victoria Baker with Forever Behavior. I'm not going to waste my time giving intros. If you want to find out more about me and my philosophy on dog training, you can go to my website at foreverbehavior.com, and forever is spelled F-U-R. In this video, we're going to talk about loading a marker to use during dog training. So what is a marker? A marker tells the dog, it's a sound, very steady, consistent sound, that tells the dog what it did when it heard that sound was what you were looking for in training. And it's going to follow with a reward. So the sound can be a verbal marker or it can be a clicker. Examples of verbal markers would be yes, good, you could say yip, you can even click with your tongue. Those are all good verbal markers. I use a clicker when I train because my brain says push a button a lot faster than it says speak. So I use a clicker, and a lot of people use clickers, but a lot of people use verbal markers too. It's just as effective. It's all about timing. And the reason why we use a marker in dog training is so that we can time exactly the behavior that the dog is giving us that we want with the marker. You will not always be able to give the reinforcer for the behavior at the time the behavior is being exhibited when you're dog training. If you're training stay, you're not anywhere near your dog to give it a reinforcer. So that's why we use a marker during training, and it speeds things up dramatically. So for example, if I were to train a dog to sit, fanny hitting the ground is a sit, right? So the dog's coming in, the fanny's going to hit the ground, and the second the dog's fanny hits the ground, you can mark, right? If you're dealing with a really young puppy, for instance, the fanny will hit the ground, you mark, and then you can give the reinforcer. And you can actually put the fanny back down on the ground when you're given the reinforcer. But if you don't have a marker, the puppy might sit and then it might stand up before it gets the reinforcement. And so there's no telling what the dog is associating the reinforcement with, whether it's the fanny hitting the ground or whether it's the fanny hitting the ground standing up or whether it's just standing up. So eventually the dog will get it, but it really speeds things up when you use the marker. And so the marker is only around while you're training behavior. Once the behavior is learned and proved, then you can fade the marker and then the reinforcer becomes intermittent. So, or you can increase criteria. You're always increasing criteria when you're training a dog. So how would I go about loading a marker? It's very simple, and it's definitely just Pavlov. When the bell rings, the dog salivates. So when the dog hears the clicker, the dog gets a treat. So you're going to click, and then you're going to give the reinforcer. You're not going to reach out with the reinforcer at the same time you click, because then the dog might associate the movement of your hand coming in as the marker and not the actual click. So we're going to click, and then pause, and then treat. If you were to use a verbal marker, you'd say yes, treat, yes, treat. And you're going to do this about, 10 to 15 times before the dog actually realizes that sound means he's about ready to get a treat. We're not training anything. We're just classically conditioning. The sound means you're going to get a reward. Like I said, after about 10 to 15 repetitions of this, then you can start to use the clicker during a training session. So what would that look like? Can you see his butt? Come on. Eddie. Eddie, Eddie, Eddie. Here. Ready? Sit. So if I ask for a sit, fanny hits the ground. Second the fanny hits the ground, I mark, and then I treat. If I wanted him to stand, he stands up on all fours. I mark the second he stands up on all fours. If I want him to sit, fanny hits the ground, I mark and treat. After a couple of training sessions, they really start to work for the mark. You know, and it doesn't really matter if they're not sure of what you're asking them to do while you're training. The marker is going to tell them the second that the dog gets it right. And when the dog figures out what he's doing in order to get the mark and the treat, he's actually learned something. So marker training is really the fastest and quickest way to teach a dog a behavior. So that's how you load a marker, and that's how you can incorporate it into dog training. And I expect you to get training. And thanks for listening.